When silence becomes strength, Commander Zarek had spent 30 years patrolling the outer edges of hegemony space. And in all that time, he had never encountered anything that truly surprised him. The galaxy was predictable. Species either bowed before the hegemony's might or were crushed beneath it. There was no third option, or so he believed, until that fateful day when his sensors picked up something unusual near a small yellow star. The star system wasn't particularly remarkable by galactic standards. It contained a few rocky planets, some gas giants, and, according to their records, one world that had once harbored a primitive species called humans. The hegemony had catalogued Earth 2 centuries ago as a developing civilization with basic radio technology and violent tendencies. Standard protocol suggested they would either destroy themselves or remain trapped on their world forever. Either way, they were irrelevant. But the energy readings Zarek's instruments detected were anything but irrelevant. Massive power signatures, scattered throughout the system, far too advanced for a species that should barely have achieved spaceflight. His science officer, a thin creature with 4 arms and compound eyes, looked up from her console with confusion written across her. Alien features. Commander, these readings don't match our records. The power output suggests advanced fusion reactors, possibly even antimatter containment systems. But that's impossible for a species at their development level. Zarek's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Run a full spectrum analysis. These humans probably salvaged some crashed ship and don't know how to properly shield their stolen technology. We'll confiscate whatever they've found and add it to the hegemony's collection. As his fleet of 12 warships moved deeper into the solar system, the energy readings grew stronger. What they found waiting for them among the asteroids and outer planets would haunt Zarek's dreams for years to come. Massive structures, clearly artificial, orbited at strategic points throughout the system. They weren't ships exactly, but rather enormous platforms bristling with weapon arrays and shielding that their scanners couldn't penetrate. How many? Zarek asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 57 confirmed, sir. Possibly more hidden, behind the gas giants. Each one is roughly the size of our largest battlecruisers. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of their engines. These weren't primitive humans stumbling around with stolen technology. This was a defensive network that had been carefully planned and constructed over decades, possibly centuries. But how had they managed it without anyone noticing? The answer came in the form of a transmission from the 3rd planet, Earth. The signal was crystal clear, transmitted on frequencies the hegemony used for diplomatic contact. A human face appeared on their main screen, female, with dark hair and calm brown eyes that seemed to be smiling, even though her expression was neutral. Greetings, visitors. I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, speaking on behalf of the United Earth Defense Council. We've been monitoring your approach and wanted to extend a warm welcome to our solar system. We don't get many visitors out this way. Zarek's shock was complete. Not only were they detecting his ships with ease, but they were speaking perfect. Galactic Standard, the universal language used by all advanced civilizations. These weren't primitive humans at all. This is Commander Zarek of the Hegemony 3rd Fleet, he managed to reply. By what authority do you claim this system? Our records show this region as uncontrolled space inhabited by a pre-spaceflight species. Dr. Chen's smile became more visible now, and there was something in it that made Zarek's skin crawl. It wasn't threatening exactly, but it held the kind of confidence that came from having very good cards in one's hand. Oh, your records are quite accurate, Commander. We were indeed pre-spaceflight 2 centuries ago, but we've been rather busy since then. Please, allow me to give you a proper tour of our home. The space around Zarek's fleet suddenly came alive with light. The massive defense platforms he had detected earlier began powering up, their weapon arrays rotating to track his ships with mechanical precision. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was what decloaked around them. Ships. Hundreds of them. Sleek vessels that had been invisible to his sensors suddenly appeared as if materializing from nothing. They weren't attacking, simply revealing themselves like a magician pulling aside a curtain. Some were small and fast, clearly designed for quick strikes. Others were massive, easily dwarfing his own flagship. All of them bore the same insignia, a blue and green world surrounded by stars. Impressive cloaking technology, Dr. Chen continued, conversationally. We developed it about 50 years ago. Turns out when everyone assumes you're primitive, they don't look very hard for signs that you're not. We've had plenty of time to prepare for visitors. Zarek's communications officer was frantically trying to contact Hegemony Command, but something was interfering with their long-range transmitters. Not jamming exactly, but their signals were being redirected somehow. "Don't worry about contacting your superiors just yet," Dr. Chen said, apparently aware of their attempts. "We're not preventing you from leaving, but we thought it might be nice to have a proper conversation first. It's been so long since we've had guests." "What do you want?" Zarek demanded, though his voice lacked its usual authority. "Want? Oh, we don't want anything from you, Commander. We're quite content with our little corner of the galaxy. But since you're here, we thought we should probably have a chat about boundaries and mutual respect. You see, we've been listening to your communications for quite some time now. We know about the hegemony's expansion policies." Another human voice joined the conversation, this one deeper and carrying the unmistakable tone of military authority. Admiral Torres appeared beside Dr. Chen on the screen, his uniform crisp and his gray eyes steady. "Commander Zarek, I served in our planetary defense forces during what we call the Unification Wars. Took us about 50 years to realize that fighting each other was pointless when there was an entire galaxy full of potential threats out there. So we stopped fighting each other and started preparing for visitors like you." The Admiral gestured to something off-screen, and the tactical display on Zarek's bridge updated to show the true scope of what surrounded them. Not just the platforms and ships they could see, but energy signatures throughout the entire system. Earth hadn't just built a few defensive installations. They had turned their entire solar system into a fortress. "The thing is," Admiral Torres continued, "we've been watching the hegemony's expansion for decades. We know how this usually goes. You show up, demand submission, and either absorb civilizations into your empire or eliminate them. Very efficient system, I'm sure." Dr. Chen nodded. "But we're not really interested in either option. We like our independence, and we're not particularly interested in conquering anyone else. So we prepared for the day when someone like you would show up and try to tell us how things were going to be." Zarek's tactical officer was running continuous scans, and the results were terrifying. The humans weren't just technologically advanced. They were sophisticated in ways the hegemony had never encountered. Their ships used power sources his instruments couldn't identify. Their weapons were of unknown configuration but clearly formidable. Their defenses operated on principles his science officer couldn't even begin to understand. "How?" was all he managed to ask. "How did we advance so quickly?" Dr. Chen smiled again. "Well, it turns out that when your entire species faces an existential threat, you can accomplish quite a lot. We had some advantages, of course. Earth is rich in resources, and humans have always been rather good at solving complex problems, when properly motivated." Admiral Torres took over the explanation. "But the real key was unity. See, for most of our history, humans spent more time fighting each other than working together. But when we realized we weren't alone in the galaxy, and that most of our neighbors weren't particularly friendly, we decided cooperation was better than extinction. We also had time," Dr. Chen added. 200 years of radio silence doesn't mean 200 years of inactivity. We just learned to be very, very quiet while we worked. Amazing what you can accomplish when no one's paying attention." Zarek's mind raced through the implications. If humans had managed this level of advancement while maintaining the appearance of primitiveness, what else had they accomplished? What other civilizations in the galaxy might be far more dangerous than they appeared? "What happens now?" he asked. "Now?" Admiral Torres smiled, and it was the kind of smile that sharks might recognize. "Now you have a choice, Commander. You can report back to your superiors that you found an empty system with some interesting energy readings, or you can tell them the truth and explain that humanity is not interested in joining the hegemony, but we're also not interested in fighting anyone who doesn't force the issue." Dr. Chen leaned forward slightly. "We're happy to establish diplomatic relations, trade, agreements, cultural exchanges, all the normal things that civilized species do with each other, but we won't be conquered, and we won't be ignored. We've worked too hard and come too far to let someone else dictate our future." Around Zarek's fleet, the human ships began moving in perfect formation, demonstrating a level of coordination that spoke of decades of training. They weren't threatening, but they were making a point. Earth was not defenseless and humanity was not primitive. Consider this our formal introduction to the galactic community, Admiral Torres said. We've been watching from the sidelines. Long enough. Time to let everyone know that Earth is open for business, but we set our own terms. The transmission ended, leaving Zarek staring at a blank screen while hundreds of human ships maintained their silent vigil around his fleet. He had come expecting to find primitive humans with stolen technology. Instead, he had discovered a civilization that had turned patience and preparation into weapons more powerful than any in the hegemony's arsenal. For the first time in his long career, Commander Zarek began to wonder if the hegemony's age of expansion was about to come to an end. The smile that shook the galaxy. The emergency session of the Hegemony High Council had been called within hours of receiving Commander Zarek's report, though the response was not what he had hoped for. Council Prime Vex, a being whose species had ruled the galactic core for over a millennium, listened to the account of Earth's defensive capabilities with what could only be described as amused skepticism. "Let me understand this correctly, Commander," Vex said, his multiple eyes focusing on different displays showing the tactical data from the human solar system. "You encountered a species we classified as primitive 2 centuries ago, and now claim they have constructed a defensive network that rivals our most advanced installations?" Zarek stood at attention before the semicircular council chamber, feeling smaller with each passing moment. "The evidence is clear, Council Prime. Their technology appears to be at least equal to ours, possibly superior in several areas. Their ships demonstrated capabilities our science division cannot explain." Counselor Thren, the Hegemony's chief, military strategist, activated a holographic display showing Earth's solar system. "Even if we accept your assessment as accurate, one system cannot stand against the combined might of the Hegemony. Perhaps these humans have advanced more quickly than expected. But advanced technology without the will to use it is meaningless." The Council Prime's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. "Indeed, it seems these humans have spent considerable resources on defensive measures, but defense is merely the strategy of the weak. They hide behind their barriers because they know they cannot compete with a true military power." Zarek felt compelled to speak, though he knew it would likely end his career. "With respect, Council Prime, I don't believe they were hiding. I believe they were preparing." The chamber fell silent. Council Prime Vex's multiple eyes converged on Zarek with an intensity that made the commander's skin crawl. "Preparing? For what exactly?" "For us, sir. They knew we would come eventually. Everything about their deployment suggests they've been studying our tactics and capabilities for decades. This wasn't a rushed response to our arrival. It was a carefully planned reception." Counselor Thren waved a dismissive appendage. "Paranoid speculation. No species achieves that level of advancement while maintaining complete communication silence. It's impossible to develop such technology without some kind of external contact or resource acquisition that we would have detected." "Unless," Zareki said quietly, "they didn't need external contact because they had everything they needed on their own world." The suggestion hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The Hegemony's expansion had always been based on the assumption that no single world could provide sufficient resources for true technological advancement. Species needed to expand, to conquer, to absorb the knowledge and materials of others. The idea that humans had achieved such progress through purely internal development challenged the fundamental assumptions of their civilization. Council Prime Vex made his decision with the casual certainty of someone who had never been truly challenged. "We will dispatch the 7th Battle Group to assess this situation properly. If these humans have indeed achieved some technological advancement, we will either incorporate them into the hegemony or eliminate them as a potential threat. There is no third option." Admiral Kresh, commander of the 7th Battle Group, was a veteran of 17 conquest campaigns. His fleet of 43 vessels had never encountered serious resistance, and he saw no reason why a single world should change that record. As his ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, he expected to find the usual mix of fear and desperate bravado that marked species facing their final moments of independence. What he found, instead, was a human transmission waiting for him before his ships had even fully materialized in normal space. "Welcome back to our solar system, Admiral Kresh," came the familiar voice of Dr. Sarah Chen. "We've been expecting you. I trust your journey was pleasant?" The Admiral's tactical officer looked up from his console with confusion written across his features. "Sir, they knew our exact emergence point and had the transmission ready before we finished our transition. That should be impossible." Admiral Kresh ignored the comment and opened a channel. "This is Admiral Kresh of the Hegemony 7th Battle Group. You will surrender immediately and prepare for integration into the Hegemony. Resistance will be met with appropriate force." Dr. Chen appeared on his main screen, and she was actually smiling now, an expression that somehow managed to be both friendly and deeply unsettling. "Oh, Admiral, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. We're not surrendering to anyone, but we appreciate the visit, and we'd be happy to discuss establishing formal diplomatic relations between our civilizations." Behind her, Admiral Torres stepped into view, and the human military commander's expression was considerably less friendly than the diplomat's. "However, Admiral, we should probably address the elephant in the room. You've brought a battle fleet into our territory with the stated intention of conquering us. That's generally considered an act of war." Kresh's confidence began to waver as his sensors detected the same massive defensive installations that had surrounded Commander Zarek's smaller force. But this time, there were more of them. Many more. "Admiral," his science officer whispered, "I'm detecting over 300 defensive platforms, and energy signatures suggest there are ships cloaked throughout the system." "A lot of ships." Dr. Chen seemed to hear the whispered report, which should have been impossible across an encrypted channel. "Actually, it's closer to 800 platforms now. We've been rather busy since Commander Zarek's visit. And as for ships..." She paused, and space around the Hegemony fleet suddenly blazed with light as hundreds of vessels decloaked. "Well, we thought you might appreciate a proper reception." Admiral Kresh had seen large fleets before, but never one that appeared so suddenly and with such perfect coordination. The human ships moved like a single organism, each vessel taking its position in a formation that spoke of countless hours of training and preparation. "Impressive," he admitted grudgingly. "But numbers alone don't win battles. Quality matters more than quantity." Admiral Torres stepped forward on the screen. "You're absolutely right, Admiral. Would you like a demonstration of quality?" Before Kresh could respond, one of the human ships fired a single beam toward an asteroid roughly the size of a small moon. The rock simply disappeared. Not destroyed, not shattered, but completely converted to energy and dispersed in a flash of light that briefly outshone the local sun. "Controlled matter conversion," Dr. Chen explained cheerfully. "We developed it about 30 years ago. Turns out when you really understand physics, you can do some interesting things with mass and energy." The Hegemony fleet's sensors went wild trying to analyze what they had just witnessed. The energy requirements for such a weapon should have been enormous, yet the human ship showed no sign of power drain or system stress. Admiral Kresh found his voice. "Impressive technology, but you won't use it on us. If you were willing to destroy other sapient beings, you would have done so already instead of talking." Admiral Torres nodded approvingly. "Very good, Admiral. You're quite right. We don't particularly enjoy killing, and we won't start unless you force the issue. But that doesn't mean we're helpless." Another human ship moved forward, this one much smaller than the vessel that had demonstrated the matter conversion weapon. It approached one of Kresh's destroyers, a warship that outmassed it by a factor of 10. "What are they doing?" Kresh demanded of his tactical officer. "Sir, the human vessel is... It appears to be scanning our ship, but their scanners are somehow penetrating our shielding without any detectable energy output." On the screen, Dr. Chen consulted what appeared to be a handheld device. "Admiral, your destroyer Relentless Pride is experiencing a minor malfunction in its primary fusion reactor. Specifically, The magnetic containment field is fluctuating at a frequency that will lead to complete system failure in approximately 4 hours. You might want to have your engineers look at that. Kresh's communications officer frantically contacted the destroyer in question. The response came back within minutes. The human diagnosis was completely accurate. A malfunction that their own systems hadn't detected was indeed present and would have led to catastrophic failure. How did you know that? Kresh asked. We scanned your ship, Admiral Torres replied simply. Non-invasively, of course. We don't like to be rude, but we wanted to demonstrate that we understand your technology quite well. Better than you do, apparently. The implications hit Kresh like a physical blow. If humans could scan hegemony ships at will and detect flaws that escape the hegemony's own sensors, they could probably exploit those flaws as well. Every ship in his fleet was potentially compromised. Dr. Chen seemed to read his thoughts. Don't worry, Admiral. We're not going to sabotage your vessels. As I said, we don't particularly enjoy killing people. But we wanted you to understand that we have options beyond the matter conversion weapons. Around the hegemony fleet, the human ships began moving in what was clearly a demonstration rather than an attack formation. They moved with impossible precision, executing maneuvers that should have required constant communication, but showed no signs of transmitted orders. It was as if the entire fleet shared a single mind. Quantum entanglement communication networks, Dr. Chen explained. Instantaneous coordination across any distance, rather useful for fleet operations. Admiral Kresh realized that he was not facing a civilization that had stumbled onto advanced technology. These humans had systematically solved every major challenge of space warfare, and had done so while maintaining the appearance of a primitive species. The level of planning and patience required was staggering. What do you want? He asked, echoing Commander Zarek's earlier question. The same thing we wanted before, Admiral Torres replied. To be left alone to develop our civilization as we see fit. We're not interested in conquering anyone, but we're also not interested in being conquered. Dr. Chen stepped forward. But we are interested in being good neighbors, Admiral. The galaxy is a large place, and there's room for many different approaches to civilization. The hegemony has its way of doing things, and we have ours. Perhaps we can find some common ground. You're offering an alliance? Kresh asked. We're offering friendship, Dr. Chen corrected. Mutual respect, trade agreements, cultural exchange, all the things that mature civilizations do when they meet each other as equals. The word equals hung in the space between the two fleets like a challenge. For over a millennium, the hegemony had encountered no equals, only subjects and enemies. The idea that humanity might represent a third category was revolutionary and terrifying. Admiral Torres smiled, and it was the kind of smile that had once made ancient predators step back from their prey. Of course, Admiral, this is all contingent on the hegemony accepting that humanity has chosen its own path. If you insist on conquest. He didn't need to finish the sentence. Around them, 800 defense platforms and nearly 1,000 ships waited silently for the Admiral's response. Kresh looked at his tactical displays one more time, seeing not just the massive human fleet but the implications of what it represented. Earth had built all of this in secret, had developed technologies the hegemony couldn't match, and had done it all without anyone noticing. If humans could accomplish this much while maintaining the appearance of primitiveness, what else might be possible? I'll need to consult with the High Council, he said finally. Of course, Dr. Chen replied. Take all the time you need. We've waited 2 centuries to have this conversation. A few more days won't make any difference. As Admiral Kresh prepared his report for the Hegemony High Council, he found himself thinking about that smile Dr. Chen had worn throughout their conversation. It wasn't the smile of someone who had won a victory. It was the smile of someone who had been holding back and was finally allowed to show their true capabilities. For the first time in the hegemony's long history, they had encountered a species that had chosen strength without aggression, advancement. Without conquest and patience as the ultimate weapon, the galaxy would never be the same.